What's going on, guys? Rybomby Teacher in the house, and I'm here with the GPL week number 7 Teambuilder. Your Royal Bournemouth Bombies are taking on the Nightmarish Shadows and Coach Krimpix in what proves to be a very important match for the GPL. Now, just to update you guys, for those who have been watching and wondering where my week 6 is, I actually took a forfeit that week. Unfortunately, as you guys probably remember, I was actually very ill, so I was unable to actually play my match altogether completely. So we took a forfeit 3-0 loss, which actually puts us in a very interesting position. In the playoff race, I'm technically speaking sat in the last spot by virtue of the fact I have the head-to-head over EXO. So it's a pretty close run. We are on the exact same record though, with 3 wins, 3 losses, and +3 differential. All the 3s. But basically, we're in a bit of an interesting spot. There's a bit of a poll going on in the GPL Discord whether we're going to cut week 8 or whether we're going to keep week 8. We're not quite sure yet. So I'm going into this match assuming that I need to win this match massively if I want to make playoffs, because Krimpix has had a very bad season, unfortunately for him. He's not won a single game, and he's had some pretty big losses this season. A lot of it comes down to his decision making and a lot of mechanical misplays. So we'll see how he goes this match. But yeah. So as far as playoffs goes, basically if I want to make playoffs, I need to win this game and win this game better than EXO wins against Cap Guy, assuming EXO does beat Cap Guy, of course. There's a couple of other people that are potentially in the running to make playoffs. If Nico beats Tyler by 6-0, he's got a good chance of getting there as well, and various things like that. Both Cap Guy and Tyler have chances of playoffs themselves, but their differential's kind of bad, so I'm not sure they'll be able to make it, but we'll see. But yeah, there's a lot of people fighting for playoffs, but we pretty much secure that spot by winning this game and winning this game really well. So, let's talk about Krimpix's team. Now, generally speaking, Krimpix has brought very similar teams every week. The first 5 Pokemon on this list he's brought to every game so far, and then the Shuckle and the Lipod he's kind of alternated between, and the last 3 Pokemon he's not used. But we're going to talk about all of them, because all of them could come to this match. Starting with his G-Max, of course, that G-Max Duraludon. This thing is a problem. It's very, very good physical bulk, decent attack stat, very good special attack stat, and relatively okay HP stat, but somewhat lacks on the special defensive side. You'll see a very interesting answer I have for it this week. But yeah. Duraludon hits really hard, gets a lot of coverage moves, things like Thunderbolt and Dark Pulse, which he's been using Dark Pulse quite a lot. He tends to run a Life Orb set, which I'm not too surprised to see. He might run Specs this week. He might need that Specs damage outside of G-Max to be able to hit me that little bit harder. I'm not too sure though. I think he probably just brings the Life Orb set to try and hit me incredibly hard. I do have some okay answers for it on my team. Goodra can actually one-shot it if I'm running a specific set, which you'll see in a little bit later. But yeah, either way, hits pretty hard, especially on the special side, just very specially frail. Next up is the bane of my existence, honestly, it's this Clefable. This thing is very, very hard to break for my team. With the ability to be Magic Guard or Unaware, I'll find out eventually which set he is, depending on what I bring. I feel like he's probably going to be Magic Guard. I think he's got to be scared of like Toxic, Leech Seed from things like Whimsicott, as well as things like Stealth Rocks and stuff like that. I do have Rhydon and Cobalion that have Rocks. So there's a lot of things I could bring to deal with the Clefable, but it is a nightmare. If this thing gets set up, I may actually just lose, to be honest. But we'll see how it goes. If he's unaware though, that does make things a little bit easier for me, because I'll know how to break it that way much easier, because I can Toxic Stall it relatively comfortably. But yeah. Either way, nightmare Pokemon. I hate facing it personally, but I gotta face it this match. Next up is Darmanitan, a very good Pokemon, a really, really hard-hitting wall breaker, but it's a mon that he's not played very well all season long. He often sacks it for no reason, either whether he just miscalcs the damage or he just doesn't really know how to use this effectively. Typically can be Scarf or Banded, does get things like Superpower, Earthquake, Stone Edge, U-Turn, Flare Blitz, of course. Gets a lot of moves, gets a lot of hard-hitting moves, which is kind of disgusting, especially with that Sheer Force ability. But we'll see how he uses it this time round. I expect him to be Scarf. I think he needs to be Scarf to outspeed Zeraora, assuming that I'm not speed creeping. So, yeah. It's a tough one for him, but I do think, as it is one of the faster Pokemon on his team, especially offensively, that he does kind of need to bring this thing Scarfed. He might bring it Banded just to try and kill my Zeraora in one shot, but that's probably about as far as it goes. Next up is Gastrodon. Gastrodon can be a nightmare for my team defensively. Obviously only having one weakness in grass. He could just run Rindo Berry, which would be really annoying. But yeah, if he runs specially bulky, that could be a problem for my team. A lot of my grass type offensive moves are special attacks, so that's something I do need to bear in mind. Gets Toxic, gets Recover, otherwise it typically runs like Scald and Earthquake. Does get Ice Beam as well, so I do need to be careful with Whimsicott in that sense. But yeah, relatively okay mon. Obviously a water immunity thanks to Storm Drain, which is something else I need to watch out for, because I don't want to give this thing special attack boost if I can avoid it. But yeah, pretty strong, pretty solid. Be interested to see if he does continue to bring it. Next up is Rodon. Rodon, probably one of the only Pokemon on this team that can really afford to come with Defog. I think the problem is because he needs Defog, I'm not sure he can Scarf this thing. He would probably want to Scarf it, but I can imagine like a Trick Defog type set, with like leftovers maybe, something like that, or a Scarf. He could trick the Scarf away, and hope he gets something decent, but it's kind of a difficult one for him. He needs Defog on it if he doesn't bring Braviary, but I feel like it's a tough one. Rodon does have a decent matchup against my team though. It does do work on my Jellicent, it does do work on things like my Rhydon and stuff like that. Can be annoying for Cobalion, but not too much. But yeah, generally if I can Toxic it or Poison it or anything like that, then we're good to go. Next up is Shuckle. Shuckle, of course, insanely bulky with those defense stats being monstrous, but offers nothing really offensively. He's been running it relatively recently with Webs and Rocks to try and hazard stack on me. I can imagine he probably tries that again, although I do have Whimsicott that Prankster defogs it, so I don't think he can really afford to bring it too easily. I can also set up on it relatively easily with things like Orbeetle and stuff like that, so not too convinced it comes, but if it does come, it's probably hazard stack. Next up is Liepard. Does get Prankster, so it is an interesting one. Prankster T-Wave could be a thing. I'm not too sure though. I don't think Liepard is a good matchup. I have a lot of fighting moves and a lot of fairy moves on my team, so I really don't see it coming. But it is the only other Pokemon he's used this season, so we'll see if he does try to bring it. I don't really know what he would want to bring it for, possibly Orbeetle, but Orbeetle gets Body Press, so I don't really feel like you would want to go for that. But it is a viable option if he thinks he can set it up. T-Wave could be annoying, of course, for my team, but I do have Zeraora that has Volt Absorb, so is immune to T-Wave, and do have a Rhydon that's a ground type, so not too sure. It could come, but I'm not convinced. Next up is Braviary, the only other defogger on his team. Actually hits surprisingly hard, does get Defiant, of course, can get themselves free attack boosts. I don't really know how he would get Defiant boosts from my team, though, because I don't really have any defense dropping moves per se, so not too sure if it comes. I think it's got a rough matchup. It doesn't look very good into Zeraora. It's nowhere near fast enough even if you Scarf it, so I don't think it comes. It doesn't really do much to things like the Rhydon. I have a lot of rock coverage moves as well to hit them with, especially things like Cobalion, Rhydon. I think Goodra gets Rock Tomb as well, things like that, so I have a lot of answers for Braviary, so I don't think Braviary can afford to come. But does hit pretty hard, does get Sheer Force as well, so I do need to watch out for that if it does come. Next up is Frostlass, kind of a cool Pokemon, relatively fast but very frail, does get Taunt, does get Destiny Bond, does get Spikes, things like that, if he wants to try and hazard stack on me. I don't feel like it really comes though. It's very susceptible to things like Knockoff, it's very weak to a lot of things on my team. So I don't think it can afford to come, but I think it's a cool Pokemon, decent utility. It does get Ice Shard, does get priority, but I don't think it can afford to come. And last but by no means least is Meowstic, another Prankstamon. Does get Screens, does get T-Wave, but it's generally very utility based. Doesn't really offer that much other than that. Again, I don't think it can really afford to come. I can just run Break on Zeraora or anything like that just to be able to break the Screens. I don't think Screens is that good against my team. In all honesty, I hit pretty hard even through Screens. So yeah, Meowstic, probably not a great Pokemon for this match. Doesn't really do much to Skuntank and things like that, so yeah, he's got to be pretty scared of bringing it for my team. So honestly, I think the top 6 is probably what he does bring, so that's largely where my focus has gone for this particular team build. But that's his team. Let's talk about mine. So, first up, I don't think it's any surprise to see it this week, is of course going to be Zeraora. Zeraora comes every week for obvious reasons. It's just way too strong on my team. It forces prep. He's got to have a lot of things that can actually deal with it. But we're running a very unusual set this week. We are scarfing, of course, to guarantee outspeed anything on his team. Basically, let's not Scarf, Lipard, Frostlass, or Meowstic, neither of which I think can really afford to come. I think of any of those being Scarf, Frostlass with Scarf Destiny Bond is probably the only thing that does come, which could be annoying, but I don't think he brings it. But yeah, so we're running Scarf no speed. This allows me to outspeed everything, including Scarf Darmanitan, Scarf Rotom, various things like that. So all of our stats are invested into attack and special attack because we are running mixed. This set's kind of an interesting set. Focus Blast one-shots Duraludon on the switch-in. Does actually do quite a number on a lot of this team. So I got a good opportunity there. Knockoff is very spammable against this team if I can get rid of things like the leftovers on the Clef or any items like that. Any Babiri Berries or anything like that. Rindo Berries on the Gastro. Grass not two shots, even specially defensive Gastro. Plasma Fist is very spammable against a lot of this team. So yeah, this just generally hits very hard. The job for this is to try and break through as much of this team as possible. If I can get this thing set up and put in a good position to hit this Duraludon especially. Duraludon really does not appreciate Focus Blast at all. Focus Blast even when it's Gigantamax two shots, so he does kill me with a Max Dragon move though if it's Draco Meteor. If it's Dragon Pulse I think I live it, but yeah, it's a pretty close one. But yeah, we're running pretty hard-hitting offense this week with Mixed. I don't think he's going to expect Mixed that, so we will see how this thing goes. Next up, I've not brought it all season, but it's finally making its debut. Rhydon is on the team. We're running it with Rux this week. This is the crippled Darmanitan switch-in, and anything like the Braviary and Frostlass if they both come. I don't think they will, but if they do, I've got a way to handle them. Running max HP, max attack with the Adamant Nature. This allows me to hit incredibly hard with Earthquake, Stone Edge, and Poison Jam. Stone Edge is a nice neutral play. I think I will probably lead this. If he leads Darmanitan, I just click Stone Edge. He could go Gastro, of course, but Gastro doesn't really appreciate an Earthquake. That's something to bear in mind. Rocks is kind of nice. Poison Jab is a bit of coverage there for Rotom. Just in case I feel like Rotom can afford to come in on this. If he doesn't bring Gastro, his only real switch into this Rhydon is that Rotom. Well, he could switch Duraludon in, I guess, but Duraludon doesn't want to take an Earthquake. So, this thing can be bulky, does hit very hard. I do need to watch out for things like Scald from Gastro and Leaf Storm from the Rotom. They do one-shot me, so I do need to be careful about that. But yeah, other than that, we're hitting pretty good. Next up is going to be Whimsicott, relatively stallish type set, but not completely stall like I brought before. Defog, Leaf Seed, Moonblast, Toxic, with a more supportive set. I got enough speed on his to outspeed a Banded Darmanitan, in case it does come. Moonblast actually two shots to Duraludon, so he can't switch in on it, and I will outspeed it. Toxic is nice, especially if he's running on a Wereclef. Leech Seed, of course, as well. Just to add further damage utility. I was going to put Sub on this, but I needed a Moonblast, so I couldn't really afford to bring Sub, which is a bit unfortunate. Defog is mostly there to deal with Shuckle. I can potentially outstall the Shuckle with this set, so we'll see how this goes. But yeah, Whimsicott's job, just to be annoying, get rid of any entry hazards if he tries to stack on me, which I do expect him to try and do, but we shall see. Next up, I brought this set before and I mis-executed it, but the G-Max Orbeetle is back. Running in a rather unusual set, I was debating on putting Recover instead of Iron Defense, but I kind of wanted the Iron Defense just to set up for Body Press. Body Press actually does quite a lot of work against this team if I can get it set up against before the Duraludon comes in. +4, I actually one-shot this thing, so that's something to bear in mind. But yeah, this thing does hit really hard. The setup is obviously very real. If I can get this thing set up, Stored Power puts in a hell of a lot of work, because there is no Dark type on this team. The only resistance he has to it is that Duraludon, which doesn't take a Body Press. So this thing can be very strong. If I can get this thing set up to sweep, that's what we're aiming for. It's going to take a lot of setup though, so I do need to be careful, and I need to watch out for getting Toxic or anything like that. But I can potentially set up on the Shuckle, I can potentially set up on the Gastro if neither are running Toxic. Although he does tend to bring Toxic on Shuckle, so I need to watch out for that. But yeah, this thing can set up and sweep. That's pretty much the primary job if I get it set up. If not, I can just use it to break things. That's all I really need it for. Thankfully, the only Dark type being Lipard, and I don't expect it to come. Body Press just puts in work against that thing anyway, so it's not a big deal. Even a dry Body Press OHKOs Lipard. So we are good to go with that. Next up is going to be Pringles the Jellicent. Running Water, Absorb this week, not Cursed Body. This is basically my switch into Gastro. Scald, Giga Drain, Sludge Bomb, and Strength Sap. Strength Sap is actually kind of nice because I can get a lot of recovery out of this and drop any attack stats, particularly that Darmanitan. Sludge Bomb is nice because Rotom can't freely switch in. Giga Drain, of course, hits the Gastro, and Scald is generally spammable against this team, especially if I can get some burns off. Would be kind of nice. But yeah, we'll see what happens with this. But I like this thing. Physically bulky, obviously, because I need to be able to take Darmanitan hits relatively well. Flare Blitz does nothing to me. Even things like Earthquake don't do that much. So that's what we're looking for with Jellicent. It's going to be my primary Darm switch in. I do want to try and preserve Rhydon's health. If it's a banded Darmanitan, Rhydon actually doesn't live 2 hits, but if it's Scarf, I actually do live 2 hits. So that's something to bear in mind. But Jellicent is going to be my primary answer. Obviously, I can bait the Rotom in and 2-shot with Sludge Bomb, so that's something that he will probably have to bear in mind. So he might have to run some HP investment or whatever to make sure he lives. But yeah, this thing can be really annoying. It's a decent pivot. Does do relatively well against his team. So we shall see if we can make good use of it. And last but by no means least is going to be Specs Goodra. Goodra with Sap Sipper, of course, means that if I do successfully bait the Rotom in with Jellicent and it goes for Leaf Storm, I can just switch it into my Goodra, get a free boost. The boost doesn't actually help me because it's an attack boost, unfortunately, not a special attack boost. But nonetheless, it's an immunity. So, Dragon Pulse, Sludge Bomb, Thunderbolt, Flamethrower, pretty spammable against his entire team. Dragon Pulse actually one-shots the Duraludon if it's not Gigantamaxed. Sludge Bomb actually 2-shots Clefable unless it's fully Spit F. Thunderbolt actually does quite a lot of work against this team. Providing, of course, Gastro doesn't switch in. And then there's Flamethrower. Flamethrower does actually 2-shot Duraludon, but Flamethrower is mostly there for Rotom. Also, it can be there for like Lipod and things like that. But yeah, this does hit pretty hard. Specs is a nasty set, especially if he doesn't expect it. So he might think I'm Assault Vest. I have brought Assault Vest Goodra quite a lot this season. I almost put Assault Vest on it, but I needed the damage output to kill the Clefable. So that's going to be our team for this week. I hope you look forward to the battle. I'm looking forward to it too. It's going to be a very fun match for playoffs. Good luck, of course, to Crimpix. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'm going to get on out of here. My name is Royal Bomby Teacher. I'm your coach of the Royal Bomber for Bombies. Stay safe, stay awesome, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.